the allocation of resources, the policies, the tracking of student achievement. I don't mean tracking in the British way, I mean just keeping track of student achievement. The second element they refer to is student participation. What are the opportunities in and outside of school for development? What are the opportunities for acceleration? Not the ministry's use of that word, by the way, gifted and talented education's use of that word. Equity of participation. And the third element they looked at were outcomes. The percentage of students who are achieving highly, the excellence gaps and representation of low income and other students. We can't conduct this type of exercise in New Zealand because we simply don't have the data. But we can think about the recommendations they made for how we might close the gap. And I think these are very relevant within New Zealand. We made 4 simple recommendations. The first is that we make high-performing, gifted and talented, whatever words we want to use, make those students visible. And the way we do that is through the visibility of policy and the reporting of what happens in relation to that policy. We have the policy there. Many people aren't aware of it. It's not visible. But we have the policy there and we need the reporting to go alongside it so it becomes more visible. The second one is to remove barriers that prevent our high ability students from moving at the pace that matches their achievement level. In other words, we need to correct the lack of opportunity for acceleration. And by acceleration, I'm referring to matching teaching and learning to the abilities of the child. And we do that with our gifted students by looking at the pace of delivery and the early introduction of new ideas, new processes, new skills. The Ministry of Education talks about accelerating learners in this country, but what they're referring to is students making continuous progress in their learning. Gifted students also have a right to make continuous progress in their learning, but not if we set the achievement levels so low. The third and fourth points refer to specialist learning opportunities. We know in New Zealand these are often part-time, temporary, often driven by enrichment, often with a strong preference for working with gifted kids within a regular classroom environment and differentiating the curriculum around that. The accountability for schools in relation to that NAG, which is the fourth point, the last Euro report was in 2008, so that was a while back. That Euro report told us that there was failure by many schools to identify and provide for their gifted and talented learners, and it's largely left up to our teachers and our teaching practice. So let's look at how we prepare our teachers. I think I might have skipped one, hang on. How we prepare our teachers in gifted education. In 2008, Catherine Rollinson, my colleague from here at University of Auckland, and I conducted a study on teacher education in New Zealand. And what we concluded was, or one of our book titles was, chapter titles was, Gifted Education and Teacher Education, Is It More Than a One-Off Lecture? I didn't have time to reconduct the study, but I can tell you from my experience at Massey University that it is indeed a one-off lecture. And I remember meeting a professor many years ago who said to me, they wheel me in for the lecture. And that's what they do with me as well. We do have university providers. Auckland, Massey and Waikato offer something in the area of gifted and talented education. We do have private providers like Reach Education, New Zealand Centre for Gifted Education, Cognition Education and other individuals who provide PD. And we used to have Ministry of Education contracts, although there is still a little bit of a flow on from that. And through that PD, through those opportunities, we see a smattering of offers across New Zealand. Maybe too many, but maybe not enough. Te Toi Taupu held the Ministry of Education Professional Learning and Development contract for the North Island from about 2011 or 12 until late last year. And that was a consortium of providers. I'm only going to talk about the North Island because I'm on the North Island, but in addition to that, the information is available for the North Island. There's very little publicly available about what happened down south. Though Te Toi Taupu evidence shifts. They showed shifts in teaching practice and how teachers were identifying, how teachers were providing in the evaluation of what was happening for gifted and talented. And they came to this conclusion back in 2014 that an effective lever for raising school-wide achievement was gifted and talented education because it has that explicit focus on identifying and nurturing talent. We've seen in the last 15 years basically a demise of professional learning and development for gifted and talented students. We had advisors in every school, lost those. We had 2 PLD contracts, lost those. And now we have, like everyone else in New Zealand, communities of learning. And the good news is we have people who've been accredited by the Ministry of Education to provide advice, and some of those people here in this room, on gifted and talented learners. I did a bit of a Google search on my favourite word, gifted, and in that I found that 2% of the accredited providers in this country use the word gifted as a key word in describing themselves. If 2% sounds too small, let's try it this way. 11 of the 502 professional learning and development advisors accredited by the Ministry of Education to provide school-wide professional development claim anything to do with gifted. So there's work to be done there. If you look at the work of Darling Hammond and her research, she talks about the difference that PD makes, and this is really, really critical. High intensity PD, so we're talking 49 hours of professional development over a 6 to 12 month period, creates a 21% increase in student achievement. We don't see a change in student achievement when we do things like what we've done today. If it's a one-off, if it's not continued, if it's not further developed, if you don't attend more, if you don't engage differently. And that's not a criticism of what we've done today, but that's a reality. The one-off workshop, the one-off conference really doesn't change what we do in classrooms with kids to raise that achievement. If we think about teachers in New Zealand, and I found this a stunning, staggering result, teachers in New Zealand have the 5th highest number of teaching hours across the OECD. When are you supposed to go get this high intensity professional learning and development? A bit of mumbling going on a Saturday. Through communities of learning, our teachers are going to receive, on average, and I realise there'll be highs and lows, 9.5 hours per year of release from primary and 6.7 hours for secondary. High achieving countries build professional learning and development into the normal working week. Sweden, Singapore, the Netherlands, again high achieving, high performing countries who, by the way, also invest heavily in gifted education, average 100 PLD hours per year. So we have to ask, do our teachers receive enough in general, let alone in working with a diverse group of learners like our gifted and talented? So why do we do this? What are our motives? I sat there thinking, what are our motives? Why do we do this? So here comes the Kiwi in me. She'll be right. She'll be right. How many times have people said to me, have said to you, they're okay, they're smart, they're going to get there, they're gifted. Down in my land, Tui country, yeah right. Yeah right, you got gifted kids? Yeah right. They need something special? Yeah right. Tell me something else. Are they just off the radar? Are our gifted kids just not in our sights? Does the public not know they're there? Do we have those limited understandings of constructs? Do we just not really know? Do people not really know? Does the ministry not really know what it means to be gifted? Has the fact, and I'll take responsibility for this, that we've asked every school in New Zealand to create a definition of giftedness that works within their context, has that led us down this road? Maybe so. We also have to look at ourselves as a field. We have to actually stop and look at what we've done. And I must admit, as I read all this, I got quite depressed and thought, maybe they shouldn't give me an award for anything. But there is power in invisibility. It's really fascinating when you start reading about invisibility. Did you know that you don't actually look through an invisibility cloak, you look around it? In order for something to be invisible, you have to hide the light that bounces within it. Invisibility is a superpower. It's the fantasy of many children, and as I discovered, it's the fantasy of many creative scientists and adults. There are people everywhere trying to make invisible cloaks. And what they're finding is, as they create the technology and they learn more and more about invisibility, they discovered this. The only way you can make it invisible is to actually hide the light. And maybe that's what we're seeing in New Zealand. Let's not forget the light of giftedness. To be made invisible, you have to first be visible. And it promises that you are going to be visible again. How might we, as professionals in gifted education, use the power of invisibility to transform? And here's how we're going to do it. Much of the work that's been undertaken by giftEDnz and by many others in this room relate to how we're going to have the power of visibility in gifted education. Invisibility, in our situation, can act as a motivating source. It should drive us into searching for the evidence for our gifted learners of what works and what doesn't work. We've got to research and discover and share the ways that we can detect and hide or interact with those invisible gifted learners. Advocacy. It's an election year, people. Not just in the US, thank goodness. And we have Gifted Awareness Week in the middle of the year. It's important that we engage in that we help our politicians understand the needs of gifted and talented learners, that we change the legislation, that we point out the gaps to them. Working together. giftEDnz, it is vital, it is critical that you are working strongly with the New Zealand Association for Gifted Children, with the New Zealand Centre for Gifted Children, with the Australian Association for Gifted Children, with SANG, with the World Council. We cannot work in isolation any longer. It cannot persist. It won't work. Networking and sharing through conferences, through supporting one another, through Facebook, through a Speakers Bureau, however you want to do it, that constantly networking and supporting is important. And we also need to actually, speaking of networks, work more with Margaret and the Scottish Network. Connecting. We need to connect. We need to lean in. We need to push in. We need to do whatever it takes to get into that area of learning support with the Ministry of Ed. We need to get in the face of ERO. We need to ask them, we need to hold them accountable for the fact that they have a national administration guideline that they're not reporting on. It's important that we share evidence, the newsletter, the website. I call upon giftEDnz to restore APEX, the New Zealand Association for Gifted and Talented Children, whatever we want to call it, the New Zealand Professional Journal. We need an evidence-based journal in this country. It's important that we also start reaching out. We need to really explore this idea of rights. We need to explore this idea of equity. We need to reframe the way we talk about our gifted and talented children. And we need to grow. Not just a membership drive through giftEDnz, but do we need to be working with business? Do we need to be working with social entrepreneurs who can help us, guide us, take what we have, because we have a firm base, but help us grow it in different ways. Help us be gifted. Help us be creative in the way in which we share our argument. So now I'm invisible to you. And that's cool because I always wanted to be a superpower. What is a superpower? For gifted students in New Zealand, it seems that their invisibility is their superpower. But even invisibility, as fantastical a superpower as it is, has limitations. For example, the invisible might not be able to convert back to visibility without certain conditions. To remain invisible may require great concentration. I don't think our government can concentrate for that long. The invisible might be detected through other senses, not just our vision, but our taste, our smell, our feel. Those with great vision powers can detect invisibility. And perhaps most importantly, invisibility cancellation and invisibility awareness are direct counters to invisibility. Invisibility cancellation and invisibility awareness are direct counters to invisibility. And that's what I'm asking each person in this room to do today. Make the invisible visible again. Thank you.